All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to Community Outreach Partner for Empowerment, our second session of our state planning series. And our speaker today, our guest speaker today is Shalonda Ajibola. She is um, owner of Kingdom Law and Justice Law Firm. And I know she has some additional information she put in the chat. We want to welcome you, Ms. Sharon, for joining us today and those who will be viewing this particular session. So each month, we started in March with a series of webinars, and we started off with this state planning series. We have one more session that we'll have next month. The first, well, I'll let Shalonda mention what the first one was, but we also encourage you to join us on our Leave a Legacy Challenge 2024, which is to start or complete your estate planning before the end of the year. So we are looking forward to some good information and robust conversation. And Shalonda, I will pass it on to you. And I'm also going to make you the host so you can share your screen.
Well, good afternoon. I'm excited. Like I said, this is part 2 of a 3-part estate planning series. Let's see, last month we talked about death and money, navigating the emotional triggers in the Black and Brown community. This month, we're going to talk about failure to plan, lessons learned from our elders. And next month, we'll talk about leaving a legacy and building generational wealth. So I kind of broke it up into these 3 parts. To first, let's examine, first of all, what may be hindering us from completing an estate plan. And as Ms. Adebiyi just mentioned, we are having a Leave a Legacy Challenge 2024. And that is a challenge for you to complete your estate plan by December 31st, 2024. So before we cross over into 2025, think of this as a coaching, just encouragement. I just want to encourage you. I know life happens. You know, as we're going through life, there's so many other things. There's kids, there's work, there's things that get on our plate. And sometimes issues like estate planning tend to fall to the background. And so this is an encouragement to help us get there. And let me also preface this that I'm not talking from somebody that's not had, I guess, a personal experience in regards to my own father that passed. And as I guess as close as you can get to that. And then of course I help clients with estate planning, but I've also helped them on the other side when there was no plans in place. And so that's what I want to talk about this afternoon. And thank you for sharing your afternoon with us. And hopefully, you know, this will be an encouragement. And so if anything, we'll have reached our goal is if you at least begin to think about your estate plan, start putting some things in place, start at least writing some things down. Because the assignment from last session was to start processing. Because I think that was, I think a lot of us, it's almost like an emotional wall that we hit when we think about, for some reason, I think we feel like if I think about me not being here, that's going to somehow mean that I'm not going to be here tomorrow or something. It's almost like we're thinking we're going to hasten our passing. But our focus is, and especially with this, and I'm hoping at the end of this session, we will remember the people you're leaving behind. And so also as we are talking about estate planning, I want you to think about, not just think about estate planning for you, but estate planning for maybe your spouse, maybe a parent, maybe someone that may not be a direct relative, but someone close to you really care about, someone that's been like a parent figure or maybe a close friend, but to start maybe having these conversations with them. Okay, I see something in the chat. I'm assuming, Ms. Debbie, you're handling the chat, right?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's move forward. So I just have here this quote, it's my understanding, from Winston Churchill: "He who fails to plan is planning to fail." So and that's the essence of the statement, is because we didn't plan, you're basically left with what you didn't plan for. If that makes sense. So this, and once again, I'm gonna try to keep it very simple. I don't want to confuse people. This can get really technical. And I'm just providing an example. I'm licensed in Texas and Missouri. So I just wanted to show you. So this is what happened. When you pass, you have a loved one that passes without a will, there is a default plan for you in state law. So they decide who is going to get what. There is written in the statute, and there's a certain delineation depending on what your situation is, whether you're still married or you pass with and sorry y'all for the background. We got a storm going on in Texas. Whether you're married, whether you have children, and so they have a whole lineup to fit those different scenarios. So, but if you got to think about if there's something specifically that you want something to go to, or you want to make sure that, well, you know what, maybe I want my oldest daughter, or maybe I want my youngest child to take over this. I don't want necessarily the oldest, just whatever that nuance may be, you have to plan for that. And the thing is, if you don't plan for it, then there's a state law that will make that plan for you. So I just wanted to just show you, I'm not about to read this, but I'll just show you just how kind of complicated this thing can get. Just, seeing a sheet of a bunch of words that's showing the who gets what, if this scenario, if this happens, if this person is left, this is what they get. So it can get pretty complicated. So we want to, if you can, try to avoid. And I guess mainly I'm saying is, the thing is this we don't know. But when you plan, then you know. You know what I'm saying? If you plan of who's going to get what, then you're the one that's making that decision. Okay? And so I talk about here, so first of all, it starts with the funeral expenses. And this is no shade on anybody. Sometimes we just got to do what we got to do. But oftentimes we see someone pass, and usually that's what it is. Most of the time when people are passing is unexpected. It wasn't, you have a car accident, someone has a bad reaction to something, and they go to the hospital thinking it's just routine, or I'm just going to get this fixed, and, then they don't come out. Someone has a heart attack. So most of death is not planned. It's not anything that we knew about. Now, we do have some other instances where a loved one is sick, and the doctor kind of gives you some estimate of when that person might be passing, but generally it is something that does kind of take you by surprise. And so we have seen them. I'm sure you've probably seen when we have been doing the GoFundMe and raising money, and even times in our families, and where people are not able to even get the funeral together because they're still trying to get the money together. And so that's something, if we can plan for this, then we won't have to, go through these things. So just some issues that you may come across that you might not think about. And then I don't want to assume, because in a number of us, you may have already gone through this with maybe a mother, a grandmother, a father, a relative, a spouse. So some things you may have already gone through, but for the ones where you haven't gone through this process of having to deal with the financial, the business aspect of handling someone's accounts after they pass, I just want to give you a peek into what you could be running into. First of them being something as simple as a bank account. You might think about it. Most banks, they won't even give you the balance of that account if they don't know, if they're not they want to verify your name. They want some type of maybe the last 4 of your social security number. Unless you have that information, even if you're a spouse, even depending on the situation, depending on how, and they've gotten so tight with information and accounts that they may require you to provide some type of documentation to get access, just to find out what's in the account, let alone try to withdraw funds from that account. So another one is the life insurance proceeds. I had a client that his wife had passed, and she had a life insurance policy, but she had named a beneficiary. So he, even though he was her spouse, he couldn't get access to those funds. That payout with that company was requiring some documentation from the court. They need to know, are you the executor or estate? Because the thing is, at that point, when someone passes, and generally they don't have a will, or even if they do have a will, you start seeing accounts will be in the estate of John Smith. You'll see sometimes the property taxes will be in estate of John Smith. When they start mailing things out, and I believe my I guess I don't know if Joanna, we want to do the comments later, but my mom could probably share her experience with having to deal with the business after a loved one has passed. But so the thing is, those accounts are in the name of the estate of. And so in order for you to access or withdraw or be able to get the benefits of that, you may have to go through some probate. And so that's similar with the title to a vehicle. You might think, okay, yeah, this is a car we've been driving, but think about it. If the car is titled in your loved one's name, and then maybe you want to try to sell it, I mean, you can probably still keep driving it, but if you want to try to sell it, you're going to need, that title that's in the name of a relative that's passed or someone that's passed. You need to find a way to get that into into your name. And one of the most common ones is transfer title to real estate. This happens a lot, where it's usually your mom, your grandma, your grandpa that they pass without a will, and then you have the house. And you're like, what are we going to do with this house? So you might have no one, if there's people that don't want to move in the house, so they want to sell the house, but they can't sell the house because the house is in your mom or your grandma's name. And so how do we get this house in a position where we can sell it? And so that's when we come to, well, there's you can have probate court, but before, here's an opportunity or thing that you can do outside of probate court, and that's called the affidavit of heirship. Now, this is a document that you can file. You don't need to go through probate court, but you're listing all the heirs. Let's say Grandma Smith, all the heirs of Grandma Smith. You need 2 disinterested witnesses. All the signatures need to be notarized. And that could be you, the person, are making the affidavit, and then you just need 2 disinterested witnesses. But then this document needs to be filed, recorded with the property records, so they can see that chain of title. And then you might, if it's multiple children, you might then, depending on who wants to sell it or who wants to keep it, you might need to do some quick claim deeds to so people can, all the different siblings can release their ownership to maybe that one person. And so outside of that, now that previous option was outside of probate court. But then we have probate court, and that's whether you have a will or you don't have a will. So with probate court, even if you have the will, you have to go and get the will. In what you were doing, you're requesting that the will be admitted to probate court. And then you, as someone that might be requesting to be the administrator of the estate. And so you're requesting documentation. And so then when you have those documents, then you can use those documents and then start interacting with banks and with, trying to get access to different accounts, maybe some 401ks and different things like that. And then you're able to conduct that business. But also when there's issues, generally, like I said, where there's no will, that's when you're requesting, and so on the next one, you're requesting basically the court to kind of give you their stamp of approval that these are the heirs. Now, there's a couple of different things. There's a small estate affidavit, but then there's also a determination of heirship, and I'll get into that later. But with a small estate affidavit, that's usually a dollar amount. If the estate, and when I'm saying the total estate, I'm talking about real property, personal property. So the amount, the total dollar amount or estimate of all the property in the state. If it's under a certain minimum threshold, then you could possibly take this opportunity to do what is called a small estate affidavit. And so that still will go through probate court. And remember, probate court requires an attorney. Because I did have a client that tried to do it on his own, and they told him, no, you need to go back and get an attorney. So once again, it's listing the heirs, and heirs are basically the ones, say, for example, if a woman dies, passes, her husband, her children, those are what we're talking about. We're meaning heirs. You need to list the assets, and you need to have the signatures need to be notarized, and then this is filed with the court. Now, this other one that can get pretty and that's the thing about it. There's still things that you can do. So there's hope. So say, once again, let's just use the house as an example. Say grandpa passes, and I'll give an example of a case that I did have. There was a woman that she was living with her dad, and she was taking care of him. So, and just imagine, she's probably, she's been living in the house, she's been managing things with the house. So, in her mind, and probably other people, that's her house. But remember, the house is in her dad's name. So she's somewhat limited. I mean, I guess you can stay in the house as, with your dad's name, but if you want to sell that house, and then you just want a house in your name. And there's a way to do it. Is not, and let me kind of preface this with saying that, of course, when someone passes, think about it, they can't make a deed and sign a deed their house over to you because they're no longer here. So that's why we have the need to go through probate. And so, but the problem is, since there was no will, we had to first determine, well, who are the heirs? And so we go through probate court. Once again, no attorney is required. You're listing the heirs. You need two disinterested witnesses. When we're talking about disinterested witnesses, we're generally talking about people that basically are not going to inherit or benefit from the estate. Some instance, I think you can use family members, but I just advise against not using people that are actually going to be benefiting from the estate, because then it's kind of like, well, of course you're going to state this is what, you're going to give your statements may be kind of biased. And so hearing also is required for this. And then that person can request letters of administration from the court. So, in essence, just wanted to, I guess I was trying, and I'll open it up for questions, but because I do have some stories, but it's just with walking with clients and going through like our own personal story. My dad passed. He didn't have a will, but thankfully my mom, they were on the same thing, so she was able to go ahead and just flow and just transact business. But then, nowadays, sometimes we have, sometimes us as women, or even maybe some men, we may have accounts that doesn't have your spouse's name on them, or, it might just some things that you don't know. And so it might get kind of dicey, how are we going to get access to this? How do we, and you may even think about things as simple. Think if you have passwords, usernames and your passwords to all your different accounts. Have you provided that to anyone? Is there anyone you even trust to provide that to? And so, but think about, how are people going to access all of these accounts that you have if you haven't provided it, if you haven't written them down? So that's in the essence of estate planning. Let's love the ones you leave behind by planning. Okay, Joanna, did anyone have any questions?
Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. I will reclaim the host. Shalana, just as you mentioned, Mom said that she was on all the accounts, so she didn't really have a lot of issues with as far as taking care of the accounts and things after our father passed. I will say, as we're waiting to, hopefully you got some those who are participating have some questions. Again, you can put them in chat or use the raise your hand feature. But I will take this moment just to introduce Myself and the organization again, my name is Joanna Adebi. I'm the president of Community Outreach Partners for Empowerment. I am actually the founder of this organization was our father. Shalonda Bola is also on the board of Community Outreach Partners for Empowerment. It was founded by Pastor Cedric Smith, who was a local pastor in the Kansas City area in 2009. And then I became the president in 2015, a year after he passed away. So this subject of estate planning, and one of the reasons why this topic is near and dear as far as one of our focuses for the organization, is because of the experience that we went through after our father passed away. He had some health issues, but I don't think that we actually, planned as which we're talking about now, because we know that our loved ones will pass away, but it was an eye-opening experience. And so this is what we're doing as far as what we experienced, is encouraging other families to deal with this sensitive topic and also be prepared. Because when you're going through the sickness and, and anticipating the death and even the death of a loved one, dealing with the finances, dealing with accounts is the last thing that you want to have to be figuring out at the same time as grieving that person's death. So this subject of estate planning is very important, and also just want to encourage, especially those in the communities of people of color, to face this this topic, to face this subject. And so our organization is, that is one of the topics, in addition to adult education, digital literacy, financial literacy, workforce development, and organizational development. So we currently are providing free webinars on these topics, and also partnering with other organizations who provide these services in the Kansas City area. We also have a building project that we're working on 57th and Prospect, which is in the 5th District of Kansas City. So you'll be hearing more about that. And we encourage you to stay connected with us. I'll put our contact information in the chat. And then Ms. Ajabola, if you want to provide your contact information, if you are interested in some estate planning services, then again, Shalana mentioned that she's licensed in Texas and Missouri, then you can definitely reach out.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I just wanted to add that if this may seem a lot and you're like, Shalana, okay, where do I start? So, and that's also part of the challenge. I am providing a free PDF on my website, and that's www.sjsmithlawplc.com. And what that is a questionnaire. And so I think the best way to start is kind of take inventory. Because I think a lot of people may feel, first of all, some people I've heard many times, oh, we don't have anything. Well, that it might mean something to somebody. A place to lay your head is something, especially if you have a house that's paid off in this this housing market, that can be something. So and so taking inventory, sometimes there's people, I'm sure you probably forgotten, oh, I forgot I had that stock at that job I had 10 years ago, or I forgot I got an account over here somewhere. And if you got multiple accounts, so taking the time to go through this inventory would then kind of bring up, and then you can take inventory and see, okay, I have this account, I have that account. And then we haven't even gone into, and that's what we'll go into the next session, the medical issue, having the power of attorney, the medical power of attorney, having those things in play. Do you want to be left on life support? Just decisions you want to make. Like, once again, our dad, we didn't have those documents. And so we were in the midst of, our dad was in ICU for 20 days. And the doctors and people was asking us what to do. And we didn't have the documentation, and my mom didn't just, sorry, speaking for her, but just didn't feel comfortable making that decision. And so those are things you want to have those conversations early, not in the heat, like Joanna was saying. You don't want it when you're stressed, when you're in the hospital, when you're sometimes some people are numb. You don't even realize the magnitude of what's happening. The doctors are telling you weird, crazy stuff. You're in a high emotional state. Then you got your family that's crazy. You're trying to manage. And then you're thinking about your job. Oh, Lord, how long I'm going to be off work? So you have so much going on that's what I'm saying. If we plan while we're sober-minded, there's no crisis, then we can be, we can hopefully make better decisions and plan. And like I said, you'd be surprised what you have. Even if it's something that's worth $20,000, you never know. That could be something that your child, your loved one could use. You just never know. It could go a long way. And so, like I suggest you, like going to that website, and it's like I say, it's a free PDF, no obligation. And it's just an opportunity for you just to go through, decide who do you want to designate as an executor. And it doesn't have to, and once again, this doesn't have to be something, oh, I got to make this decision now. Sometimes you might want to think about it. You want to talk it over with your spouse, if you have one, talk it over with your kids, just kind of think about, okay, who, especially have minor kids as well. Who do you want to be the guardian? If something happens to you, who do you want to take over raising your kids? So just really start thinking about that. I think sometimes we may think, oh, everything will just work out when I pass. We hope. I mean, that's what we hope. But you just never know. So I think the best gift we can give our loved ones is this planning. So. Mr. Debbie?
Yes. Okay. So we do have one question. Do you have to set up, do you need a will if you set up a trust?
So you can do a will and a trust, or a will or a trust. So it just, it really just depends on how, if you covered everything in the trust. And then the difference between a will and trust, that could probably be a whole nother training. But the thing about, of course, with a trust and what has been advertised is that you don't have to go through probate. So, but the thing about even with a trust, it's still part of what you call an estate plan. And so that's what I was mentioning about the questionnaire. The questionnaire is talking about the whole estate plan. So it's not just coming out with, okay, now I have a will, but it's talking about your power of attorney, your advance directive, your HIPAA authorization. It's all in this medical power of attorney. Because you can have a power of attorney for just someone to handle your business, sign documents, do contracts, do things on your behalf. But then there's a medical power of attorney where you want someone to make medical decisions on your behalf if you're incapacitated, you're in a state where you can't make those decisions for yourself. So yeah, the option is really up to you. But yeah, that was a good question.
There was a question asking if this recording will be made available, and yes, it will be. We are recording now. It will be posted on our webpage. And if you send me an email and you want it directly, I can email it to you directly, but it will be posted on our Facebook page. Where else do we post it? We also, I believe, posted on LinkedIn, and we will post it on X, formerly known as Twitter.
And I'll put I'll put it on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So Shalon, do you want to talk briefly about what you will be sharing at our next section?
Yes. And so kind of recapping. So I broke the training up into three parts. And the first one, which is, and also the first one, it should be available, right? It's already on the same places that Mr. Debbie Joanna just mentioned. And that was talking about death and money, the triggers. For some reason, and if you lived any length of time, been to a number of funerals and been involved in some stuff, I don't know, something just happens to us when someone passes, and when there's some people think there's some kind of money involved. So I felt that let's talk about what may be hindering us, what we may be dealing with emotionally that's keeping us from getting this done. And so this session, of course, was talking about what happens when we didn't get it done. When the loved ones on the other side are now having to deal with the business of, wrapping up these affairs. And so the last session is actually going to be, I'm going to go through all the documents, list the documents in your estate plan, at least the minimum documents in your estate plan, because of course you can have more than that. And just kind of go over what the documents are actually doing. And so that'll give you a start. And like, once again, talking about the questionnaire, if you get the questionnaire, the information that you write down in that questionnaire will basically help fill out those documents. Okay. And so basically we'll end up with, we go through the training, so you at least have started and then hopefully on your goal of completing the state plan before the end of the year.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share briefly, I guess, my experience. Again, I mentioned that both Shalonda and I are related. We're sisters, and our father, who was the founder of Community Outreach Partners for Empowerment, when he passed away in 2014, again, it was definitely, an experience, one of the most life-changing experiences in my life. And so, as I mentioned, at this topic of estate planning, realized how much of an importance, that it was. However, I did not do my own estate planning until 2021, and I was living in New Jersey at the time. So single, I had my, sisters as, cause I had the 3 documents that Shalonda is going to be sharing about next week and, next month, I'm sorry. And so I had them as the signatures. I had my nephews, I think, as having some of the, what do you call it? Assets that I have, which I don't think I really had. Well, I have my TSP, which is like a retirement account for my job. And I think that's the only asset that, because at the time I didn't have a home. I wasn't owning a home at the time. But anyway, but now I am married. I need to update my estate planning. So I also will be participating in this challenge. And the goal is to get that done by the end of the year. So just to give an example of just like, where you're at in different points of life and, how this is, necessary. And even if you have some estate plan documents in place, how you have to keep up with them because our situations do change. And so as they change, then you want to make sure that, you have current information. We thank those who have just joined. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. Shalonda went over, some of the lessons learned from our elders as far as not necessarily having estate planning in place, and gave some examples. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or you can take yourself off mute. We'll give a few minutes, and if we don't have anything, we will go ahead and close for this session and invite you to stay connected with us. Do we have a date for the next one? I don't believe we do, but we will be posting it on our website and on our social media. In the meantime, our next series session is going to be next weekend, April 26th. We will have second session of our workforce development series at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, interviewing skills. And then on next Saturday, the 27th, at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll have the organizational development webinar, and we'll be talking about common business structures. So again, we thank you for connecting with us today. We didn't want to hold anyone long. We just wanted to kind of, again, just give you some information, and you can definitely record this again. We'll post it on our social media. And Shalonda has put her website in the chat if you want to follow up. And then also our Community Outreach Partners for Empowerment, we also have our information in the chat if you want to take that down real quick.
I just wanted to mention there are things that you can do that you can pass to beneficiaries without going through probate, but we can get more into that at the next session.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you again for participating. And then you have our contact information. You can go on our website, www.copekcmo.org, for for a list of our webinars and to contact us, or you can email us at copekcmo@gmail.com. Thank you and have a great weekend.